Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Bad Times Good Stories podcast. My name is Joe Flanders, and I am just over the moon to be with you today, whether it be in your ears or your eyes and your ears, as if to say, whether you are listening to this or watching it. I'm glad to have you here. And how's your day going? I hope it's well. Today on the show is comedian Rachel Wolfson. She is really funny, and we had a really interesting conversation about her experiences going to a lockdown school in Utah, which is a school for, I guess it's a reform school for kids who have had a rough go of things, ranging from drugs to alcohol to just kind of being lost and a nuisance in general. So a wide range of people, as she talked about. Seemed to be a pretty crazy experience, and we talked all about that. And we also talked about her podcast, The Bud, and her love of marijuana, and how she went from a kid who thought that she would die if she smoked a joint to now being a big proponent of marijuana. And it was just a great time. I enjoyed chatting with her, and I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, let us know by giving us a 5-star on iTunes. That would be fantastic. Please, go for it. Do it. I think I said I was going to time how long it takes to do this. So here we go. I've got my phone. I'm opening the podcast app that comes standard on all iPhones. I'm going to my podcast. I'm scrolling past the previous episodes. Scrolling. Ratings and reviews. Tap to rate. 5 stars. Submitted. I thought there'd be a confirmation. I now am the tacky asshole who just gave myself 5 stars. However, it was that simple. So, we'll put a timer in the video so you know exactly how long that took. My guess was 17 seconds. And if I wasn't talking out loud, it could have been 14 seconds. Who's to say? Anyway, I'd really appreciate it. It helps us grow and attract guests and potential sponsors and all that good stuff. So thank you for doing that. You can also check out badtimesgoodstoriespod.com and look at past episodes or listen to past episodes. Check out our merch. Get a nice Bad Times Good Stories mug like the one that I'm holding. It even makes the coffee taste better. There's just something about it. It's one hell of a mug. And you can email me at badtimesgoodstoriespodcast@gmail.com and share your bad times that you think make good stories, and I may just share them on the air. That's all for now. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Rachel Wolfson. So I saw on your social media last night that you were at the Pornhub Awards.
I was.
Was this planned? Was it a last second thing? How did this come together?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So my friend Alexis Fox, she's a huge adult film star. We became friends on Instagram. She slid into my DMs.
Oh, nice.
I was like, wait, shouldn't I be sliding into your DMs? And we became friends, and she puts on a monthly variety show at El Cid. That has like comedy and improv, and you guys should definitely come check it out.
Yeah.
She has like a musical act at the end. And so she started booking me on her shows. We became friends. She's huge into cannabis and weed, which I'm all about. And then she asked me to be her date. And I was like, what? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the most feminist thing I've ever done. I'm out here supporting, the cause, but, and I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I grew up in Vegas, which is like so pro, nudity and just, adult film, whatever.
Right.
And, it was awesome. And I have like such a new found respect for like adult film actors and actresses.
Yeah.
And I was developing crushes. Like I was just like, oh my God, I would totally do you. I would do you. I have done you in my mind. No, but, it's just such an art form. It really, I feel like, I don't know. sex is just so taboo, you know. I still feel like for some people, and I feel like people are just like uncomfortable with, I mean, we're sexual beings. We're meant to have sex. We're meant to, you know, reproduce. I mean, that's what the plan is, at least, whether or not it happens. But, you know, I think it's an art, and it's just, it kind of reminds me of comedy in a sense.
Okay.
And it's funny because Alexis, who, you know, is a successful adult film actress who, you know, is seen on film in every angle you could imagine. Right. She gets nervous getting up on stage and hosting her shows.
Really?
And she's like, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, I don't know how you do it, you know?
Right.
Like, but it really, I mean, it's kind of, you're in a sense, you're up on stage, you're vulnerable, speaking your truth, and people are there to judge you. And it's kind of like being naked.
Sure.
So, I mean, I think comedy and porn go hand in hand. I don't know.
Hand in dick.
Hand in vagina. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It was a really cool, and Kanye was there. He creatively directed the fashion show before, and it was so cool. I was like, what Kanye really is here. Someone made a joke about Kanye. The next thing I looked up, he's like on stage directing half of these naked women, like in positions. Wow. So, not those kind of positions, but like in, you know, wow. They were naked. So it was cool.
So you said you kind of had you found a newfound respect for them. Was that based on like a conversations you had?
I mean, it's not that I had any lack of respect before, but I mean, when they're like, sex is their job. So, and it's not, you know, when we see these films and these porn, you know, and we're like, wow, this is great. But there's so much work that goes into them. I mean, they're there, they have to know their poses, their scenes, you know, there has to be chemistry. They have to remember their line, you know, God forbid, but it's a job, you know, and so, and you have to be in, you know, they look beautiful. And, you know, I just think that they get a bad rap because our society is so judgmental.
Right.
And it's like, they're just doing what we all do, but they look good and they get paid for it. You know? Like, and they do it for everyone. So they're just so giving, you know. Porn stars are very giving. So
no, I think that's true. I think I've definitely been guilty of holding like a weird double standard where it's like the same person that I've gotten off to watching. Right. I also scoff at them like, oh, well,
they're just,
they're
you know,
lower,
but they're not. I mean, they're just, I think that if you take the judgment out of it, which we're so quick to judge people, but it's like we have no room, and they're just so kind. I mean, not, I'm sure there's some asshole porn stars out there, like but my friend Alexis is wonderful. She's the kindest, sweetest, most giving human being ever, and I support everything she does. She was nominated for 2 awards: Best Squirter and MILF. She didn't win, but you know, I think she's a winner either way. So. Yeah, really cool event.
That has to be kind of one of those, I don't know, living in LA and doing the struggling artist life, you got to like grasp onto those nights that you're like, this is why I live here.
Yeah. I mean, it was one of the most LA things I have. I mean, I'm like, Kanye's here. People are walking around naked. I mean, you know, it was very LA. So
yeah, I would think so.
It was great.
You said you grew up in Nevada, in Vegas?
Born and raised in Las Vegas, you know, the city of sin. It's like being born in an ashtray, you know, depending on how you look at it.
Sure. Yeah.
But I grew up in a really strict family. So, which is weird because my mom was always a big fan of Howard Stern. For some, you know, my mom, she's a judge, and my dad is a lawyer and a district attorney. So I grew up in this like very political, well-known and locally in Vegas family. My mom is famous for putting OJ Simpson in prison.
I saw that in one of your stand-up sets.
So, I mean, it's weird because like it's like my mom, she's this strong, you know, figure in my life who also would appreciate, you know, like I said, Howard Stern, and like, you know what I mean? Like, she's a human being like the rest of us. So,
right.
But like, sex and weed, and you know, that was just stuff that like you weren't supposed to do. And even though we grew up in Vegas, they tried to make us, you know, fit into the box. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like
sure.
they sent us to private school to be raised by like Catholics and, you know, so they tried.
Did they kind of like use, you know, like today I had to put away somebody for doing this drugs and, you know, use that as a way of sort of scaring you into not
they
doing
would
that?
do better than that. They would just bring us to work with them.
Hey, there you go. Yeah.
You know, there's one thing telling someone about it, but when you're there and you're like, oh, there are several people in orange jumpsuits who look really scary and unhappy. So yeah, I mean, they tried to use those like Steve from Jerry Springer scare tactics, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, I think that's if I were them, I would have done the same thing, raising two young daughters in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You know, it's a fast city.
Yeah.
So.
Were you like in the, because, you know, I think most people when they think of Vegas, it's like the strip. But I feel like there's a lot, I was obviously a lot more
I didn't live like in a hotel on the strip,
Yeah.
but I did live like 15 minutes away, you know, off the strip. And then later on, as my parents became more successful, they moved us to the suburbs. So yeah.
Wow.
Of Las Vegas, which they have hotels in the suburbs there too. It's, you know, it's an interesting place, but.
Yeah. So to clarify, was it, did your mom put OJ away? Was that the Vegas
robbery?
incident?
Yeah, the robbery case.
Okay.
She's not Lance Ito. People
Right.
are like, what? Your mom's Lance Ito? And I'm like, no. She's a woman. Her name is Jackie, Judge Jackie. But yeah, for the robbery memorabilia case. So she put him in prison.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
But he got out. So yeah, he's out.
So it sounds like you ended up in a school that was.
Oh, okay. So basically,
I'm curious.
Well, like I said, growing up in Vegas, they I think they tried to like shelter us and protect us as much as possible. But I was always a rebellious kid. I was a wild child. You know, I was always like that kid when they told me no, I was like, I'm definitely going to do whatever you told me not to do.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't a bad kid, but I think that naturally their overprotectiveness, and like they were parents during like, I was born in 1987. Like I was a part of the medication generation, you know, like, as soon as you see your kid like being a little weird, they're like, okay, we need to put him on Adderall.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like that's
Throw
the
it
trick.
Yeah.
So I was like on Adderall at a very young age I was like diagnosed ADHD. And then when I was 17, like MySpace came out and I was just like a rebellious kid. I was sneaking out of the house. I put up like a risque picture on MySpace in like a bra and underwear. It was risque, but it looked like a bikini.
Sure.
And I think that was like kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for my mom. She, like who knew I was just like being an influencer at a very, like I was like just, predicting the future, but they thought I was like going down a path of like, toxic behavior.
Sure.
So I like one day I snuck out of the house, even though I had been sneaking out of the house for years to like go make out with my boyfriend or whatever. But this time I got caught. Like I was caught by the warden and then they sent me to lockdown in Utah. Which is like kid prison basically. And half the kids there were like court ordered and the half like their parents who had enough money like sent them there to like get straight. But yeah, I mean it was in Provo, Utah, which is like a very strict, obviously Mormon community.
Okay.
It wasn't a Mormon school, but like everyone who was there was Mormon basically.
Okay.
And yeah, that was like my parents dropped me off, but like there were some kids who would get taken in the middle of the night, like and escorted like out of their beds. There was like some kids whose parents would be like, we're going on a ski trip to Utah, but then they like dropped them off at this facility in Provo. Yeah. So, I mean, at least I had like willingly known like, okay, I'm going to a place, but I didn't know I didn't really know like what to expect.
Sure.
And I remember my dad's like we're all sitting in like the I wouldn't call him the principal, but like the warden, I guess, if you will, of the place.
I will.
I'll use that term again. And my dad was just like, he made a comment to me like, this is nice. This is kind of like a country club. And I'm like, this is not anything like a fucking country club. Like, this is just the doors that you see. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't go beyond, like, we were basically in an old church that was like it was like an old church that was turned into a school.
Okay.
Basically.
And you said you were 17. So
I was 17. So I was there for 13 months.
Okay.
So I turned 18 in Utah, and I had to sign my rights away so that I could graduate the program.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So were you really just sneaking out and making out with your boyfriend? Like this, I want to figure out what exactly you did.
Well, I mean, that was a number of things. Like I was, I was I didn't listen to my parents. I was defiant. My grades weren't great. I wasn't drinking or doing drugs because they scared the shit. Like, they told me if I smoked weed, I would die. And I like believed them, this is before the internet,
Right.
before Snoop Dogg memes existed.
It's like Snoop Dogg seems
right.
okay.
Exactly. If only I had the like right propaganda. But then, like, and just things at home weren't great. My parents were having their own issues.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, to them, it just made sense to take me out of the equation,
right.
For the family or whatever.
Sure. It was just a general sense of she's kind of lost, not really like focused.
I think they wanted, I think they were like, it was like a preventative measure type thing, So, and also I was in my senior year, entering into my senior year. Like I said, my grades weren't great. My future looked, grim. Like, my dad started offering the military as like an option. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? Do you think I would go into the military? Not, I support the troops, but like me going to the military would be opposite of supporting the troops. Like, I would like take down a whole infantry or something, and I'm like, let's go smoke weed. Fuck this mission.
Exactly.
So,
okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
My dad one time threatened the military, but he forgot that I was born with club feet.
Oh, so not going to work.
Empty threat, Dad.
Yeah.
You're not going to take me.
They like offered they were like suggested the military or beauty school. I'm like, those are two complete. I'm like, really? Like, operating a gun or cutting someone's hairs with dull scissors. Like, that's the tools you want me to have.
It's funny as we get older when we can just look back at those things and you could always just want to ask so what was that threat about?
But also, like, what were your realistic expectations? Like,
sure. Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I mean, they tried.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So you're thrown into this place where it sounds like, on a scale of 1 to 10, you've got people, kids who are, tens who maybe probably haven't killed anybody, but these were young.
I mean, these were like the kids that you would see on Maury who were like, I'm not listening to my mom. I'm going to have as many babies as I want. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? Just like that. I was like, these are my peers. These are, cause I was 17, but I was in there with girls who were like 15 and, up.
Yeah.
So, or 13 to 15. I mean, young kids. And
what was that like? Just that transition?
Well, the transition was hard. I mean, it really, like, it was a shock at first because, one, it's a culture shock. I'm in Utah. I grew up in Vegas. Like, this is, what do you mean I can't have coffee? Like, what do you mean?
That's right. Coffee.
Like, so, for the first 4 months, I like cried myself to sleep every night. I mean, it is kind of like, I hate to insult prison this way, but it was in a sense very prison-like. Is when you get there, you're grouped in with all of these girls who have all of these issues. I mean, serious issues, girls who were like addicted to heroin at 13, were doing terrible things to get that heroin, people who had suffered serious, like, childhood abuse from like family members, like horrific things that, like, this is why they are here, and became the person that they became. They didn't have those resources. And it really did like shake me to my core. Like, one, is this what my parents think? Like, is this what they think of me? But two, like, there are some really fucked up people in this world. And like, what a range, I have to compare myself to. But, I mean, there was just like cliques, and especially you're coming in, you're the new chick. I was cute, right. Like, I'm going to steal their prison boyfriend, like you had to like play the game. There was a whole system that you had to like, graduate from. And it was a real, like, you had to start it was a program. So like, in order to get out, you had to like graduate this program, which is, ran by these people who aren't that much older than you. I mean, they hired like young Mormons to work, you know,
doing God's work.
And they weren't perfect fucking either. You know, they were some of the most fucked up, like we're out here and I found out later they're fucking in the back smoking weed, you know, doing drugs with some of the, and I'm just like, these are the people that you pay all this money to try and straighten us out.
Wow.
So
and it was a co-ed school?
It was co-ed, but they heavily kept us separate. Like we weren't, it was like, you know, eyes are not on, you know, we would get in trouble for it. So, but still like we found ways to like, you know, link eyes. Oh, we're definitely dating. Or, but yeah, it was a very much like once after 4 months, that's when I finally realized, okay, you have to fake it till you have to play the game, which is like, that's what it is in prison. You know, good behavior gets you, you know, privileges and opportunities, even though deep down you like might be scheming on the side.
Right. And what was a typical day like? I'm trying to get a sense of what.
So you would wake up at like 6:30, 7 o'clock, make your bed. You'd have to go down to the main area, write your goals out for the day. We would all read out our goals. Then we would go downstairs, have breakfast, come back up, do workout, either go to the gym or work out together or whatever. After that, we would have like our either it was like drama or I don't know. It was like some activity or something before or after meds. There's like meds in the morning, meds after lunch, for those who are on meds. Then there was like the people who went to AA, and then there was the people who went to therapy, and then there was the people who like went and like, even though some of these, I'm like, are you qualified to be giving me therapeutic advice right now? And then you would have lunch, and then, I mean, it was after lunch, there was like free time to like sit inside and, you know, work on homework or gym. There was a lot of movie watching, like TV, you know. Yeah. What do you do to entertain a bunch of, you know, you put on the television, you know, but it was always like PG movies.
I would imagine.
You know, it was, if you were like, depending on how far you were in your program, like when you get there, they changed the rules after I got there. Like you're not allowed shoes for like 2 weeks. You have to earn everything. Like everything is like a privilege. Going outside is a privilege. So if you don't earn the trust of, you know, in your program, if you're not working the program, you're not allowed outside. There's bars on our windows. Wow. People do try to escape. The town is on alert where if someone does get out, look for this person. We are all wearing uniforms. They take all of our clothes away. You're not allowed razors. You're not allowed mirrors. So like it's like, okay, Thursday's pink shirt day. You have your pink shirt and you have your khakis. I mean, it's like, wow. So, I mean, it's designed to rehabilitate, kind of like prison.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's a lot of, spending a lot of time around the same people who are hurt and damaged and who have triggering behaviors. And that was the other thing, is you had to watch what you say. You can't talk about certain things. You can't talk about drugs. You can't talk about drinking, you know, inappropriate relationships with the opposite sex. I mean, like all of these things are triggering. So we were watched at all times, very, very few moments of privacy. So, I mean, it's a lot of like finding ways to keep busy. It's a lot of like self-reflection. Yeah. You know, and then, you know, we would have, our activity, we would go to school at night.
I was wondering.
Yeah. We would go to school, which the school part, they advertise the school that like everyone there, has like a high percentage of like academic, like everyone passes with an 80% or above, but that's because they make you take the same test over and over until you get an 80% or above. I mean, it's a lot of, I missed out on a whole year of like education. Wow. And I didn't know how to write a paper until I got to college, but because my grades were so good at this school, I was able to get into college, where I was ultimately able to learn how to write a paper and, you know, the stuff that I should have known before I got to college. Right. So yeah.
So can you relate to some of the elements of like Orange is the New Black?
It's funny because I have seen a whole season of I think the first season I watched.
Yeah.
I mean, it is, I don't want to say like where I went is anywhere like near what prison is or jail, because I don't want to insult people who actually have gone it, but it is similar in a sense of you're taking people out of society with the purpose with the intent of rehabilitating them using some of the similar techniques and things that lockdown in prisons have, uniforms, order, schedule, routine, structure, whatever, earning rights and privileges. And so, I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there was some this was like some real prison type stuff, but I mean, not really, but we had to go and to a school in Utah to clean out. We got separated from the boys because we were doing school at the same campus, but they found that was too much of a distraction. So they moved us off campus to a different place to have school.
Yeah.
We had to go clean out the school, and there was a science lab in this school that had a bunch of needles, and a couple of the girls stole these needles and started piercing themselves in the bathroom. And I was in the bathroom at the time when I saw some of these girls doing it, but I didn't say anything. You know what I mean? Because I'm no narc.
No snitch.
You know what I mean? I'm not a snitch. Snitches get fucking stitches. However, because I didn't snitch and because no one snitched, eventually someone found out, someone narked, someone told, who was much later on in their program. And we all got in trouble for like not narking. So it was like, this is fucked. You know what I mean? And like the consequent, they would call these, when we get in trouble, they would assign consequences. And one consequence was equal to like 30 minutes of homework or 30 minutes of calisthenics, which is like deep, intense working out. So I remember I got in trouble one time for something and I got 100 consequences. It took me forever to work those off. Oh my God. Or like cleaning. It's either like cleaning the bathrooms, like the dirty tampon boxes, a half hour of working out or a half hour of homework. So
what did you do to get 100?
I got out of, or if you were like far enough in your program, they would like allow you to go see your family. And I went to go see my family. And like when I was sent away, like a lot of my friends didn't know what happened to me. There was no like real like internet at the time to like communicate, hey, off to lockdown,
right?
Send message, send help. So I was on a trip with my family visiting them, and my sister had a cell phone, and I checked my voicemail to like, cause I was like, I wonder if any of my friends are like worried about me. Yeah. And my sister saw that and she fucking narked on me to my parents, and they told on me to the school, and the school like, Man. I was like, wow. Fucking, your own blood, you know what I mean? It was like some Sopranos type betrayal. Yeah, exactly. Godfather
or whatever.
I was like, she's dead to me now. She was young, and she was working for the for the government, my parents. So
she was a straight arrow.
Yeah, she was just a spy. But yeah, so it's dumb, but whatever. Yeah. It was I had to work off 100 consequences.
Wow. So to circle back a little bit, and maybe I want to, like, when you found out you were going, like, was it crushing or? Well,
the reason I had like even ended up there, aside from like the stuff that I had told you about, is that night that I snuck out of the house, my backpack had been taken from my car. Like my backpack got stolen out of the back of my car. And the next day when my parents caught me sneaking out, the next day I had planned to go to school just like normal. I would just have been punished, like no phone, no TV. I would be in my room, whatever.
Yeah, the standard,
And, I realized like my backpack wasn't in my car, and I'm like, you can't just show up to my school with it. Like, you just can't show there. They'd be like, okay, what are you doing here? Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, this is an open book test, which I have multiple times forgotten my book too. I was a stoner before I was even a stoner.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of had like a breakdown. Like that was like, I was like, like what the fuck is going on? And that's when my mom decided to take me out of school. And I think it like came to a head. Okay. Like whatever we're doing is not working. This is not, this is not a path that is going to lead to something good. And so it was I guess at the time, like I didn't realize like what was to come, like what I was about to go through, but it did feel, because I come from a really successful family. I mean, like my mom, my dad, and now my sister, she's a 27-year-old prosecutor and she's been doing it for 2 years. So she was the youngest person in her office. So I just like, I have always grown up with this like pressure to be great. And, you know, I think that it was just like, oh, you know, here I am disappointing my parents again. And I just kind of fell into that mindset of like, I'm a fuck up, you know, I'm crazy, you know, all of the negative self-talk or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I guess, I was just disappointed, you know, I didn't like the person that I was either, you know? Okay. So.
Yeah. So did part of you think like maybe this could be good?
I mean, I think it was like whatever this is, it's meant for me, you know? Yeah. The program itself, I would never recommend for anyone to, I don't know if that is the answer, but because I think that I wasn't a bad kid and everything that I was going through or doing was pretty normal. You know, most kids my age were sneaking out of the house or like doing way worse things than I ever was. Cause it was never drinking or drugs or anything. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it was, it really toughened me up though. Like it gave me a thick skin. It opened my eyes to, okay, you know, we all have our struggles, but like you would never realize looking at a person, like how much shit that they've gone through without, you know, you just, cause these were girls who look, you know, just like me and you. Right. And we all have our problems. So,
so did you have like, you know, were there friends and then you had enemies that you had to deal with? Like what was the breakdown of like the social order and everything?
There definitely was a social order because you get there and there are girls there who are like about to finish their program. There are I mean, it's always like an open enrollment type thing. So like you're always getting new people. There are people leaving, being sent away to wilderness, or people just disappear, you know, like you never see them again, right? Until they show up on social media years later and you're like, that's the fuck what happened to you. You know, like, that's great. You got out of prison again. But yeah, I mean, I after the 4 months where I kind of like figured out, okay, I have to align myself, you know, it really is like prison in a diet Coke sense, watered down version. Sure. So I started to like become friends with the girls who were like in the mentor. That's what we called the people who were in charge of us were called mentors. Even though I would never let none of them mentor me. But nah, a lot of them were really nice. I mean, they are Mormon. It's not like they're terrible people. They're just Mormons. Some of them might be terrible, but I mean, so I became friends with, I had a group of friends, but I mean, yeah, it was, it took a while to kind of earn their trust, earn my trust. I mean, you're with girls, you know, right. We're young girls. We're all in this like weird situation where, I mean, that's the thing too, is like, who do you trust? Because girls will narc on you to make themselves look better if you're doing something wrong. And I mean, everything at any point you're doing something wrong, most likely, you know what I mean? Like they will find a way. So, but I have girls that I still talk to that I'm friends with, you know, on social media that I keep in contact with, but a lot of the people that I went there with have like either passed away, ended up in like worse situations. A lot of them are, you know, not doing great. Right. But for the most part, you know, there are a couple of us that are all right, you know? Yeah. So, yeah.
So by the time that you left, were you like happy to get the hell out of there? Or was there a part of you that kind of, you know, it became comfortable having the routine, or maybe bittersweet? I don't know.
I want it. Yeah. I guess I mean, I was more than excited to get the fuck out of there because I was 18, you know, I just was ready to start my life. But also, I did have a friendship group there, and I did meet some really great people. But yeah, I mean, that's not a place that I would recommend. It's because it's not health. I mean, it's I don't know if that's the answer, those type of situations. Like, not that I don't know if prison is like correct. You know, look at how many repeat offenders we have, and people who you have rehabilitation in mind, but like, why do you keep having so many repeat customers? You know what I mean? Like, something is not working.
Right.
So the people that I've met there, and even some of the mentors I'm still friends with on social media, they keep in contact with me, and they're good people, you know, despite the situation or whatever. But yeah, no, I was very much ready to like get the fuck out of there and start the rest of my life. And after that, I ended up moving to Vermont, which is complete opposite of the place that I was, you know? So, and that was really where I think a lot of my growth as an adult and young adult started.
Sure.
With the foundation of like, okay, I had just been in Utah. What a gift it is to just be able to go outside without having to ask, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure you had just an appreciation for the most basic elements that people take for granted every day.
Well, because the funny thing is where I had gone to college after in Vermont, I went to a school that's a junior college for people who like struggle with like learning differences. So like you have to, in order to get into the school, you have to like prove that you have like ADHD or dyslexia or whatever, but it's a great school because it gives you the foundation to transfer into like a 4-year or whatever. And after I graduated this school, this junior college in Vermont, I got accepted to every college I had applied to, which at one point was not even realistic for me because of my grades. Like I was getting scholarships. I got a scholarship to Northeastern. I ended up going to American University. I was accepted into the School of Communication there. I mean, these are great schools.
Yeah.
And so, at least in that sense, it was worth it because it gave me, and that's like, I was grateful that I went to school in Utah that got me into the school, into Vermont, that ended up getting me and giving me the validation that I am good enough to get into these schools if I wanted to.
Right.
So,
yeah. How was your relationship with your parents while you were in Utah, and then also, afterwards?
It was rough because like they sent me away. Like I had to deal with like there's like an element of like rejection that I felt, or that like you naturally feel. This is your parents being like, here, we can't deal with you. Like go, people need to deal with you. So, but like, I feel like I didn't grow up in like a traditional family in a sense of like, I'm not like talking shit about my parents. They're great parents, but they're not like the typical warm, come cuddle with me, I love you. They have their own ways of showing love. So, I mean, the relationship ended up getting better, but we had to work on it, and, we still talk about, like, I think they ended up, because like, I don't think they realized until after, like, what I would, like, the kind of people I was around, the kind of shit that I had seen when I was there. And like, I think it put into perspective, like, maybe you're not so much like all those people, but what does it even matter? Because I'm not any better, but, I think maybe they realized like maybe I wasn't such a bad kid. Like after, in retrospect too, because like a lot of their friends' parents' kids are just like fuck ups, And now, and they're still seeing that. So,
Yeah. When did comedy kind of come into the picture for you?
Comedy came in, well, I was always interested in drama. I did drama even in boarding school, drama when I was a kid, improv. My mom was always making sure I was involved in extracurricular activities so that like it kept me out of some trouble. Yeah. Always been a natural interest in like performing. I mean, I would come downstairs, like my mom just brought home videos to show, like they just now discovered transferring home videos to DVDs. It's like a new technology for them. And they showed me a video, like I would come down every morning in the kitchen and put on these like one man, I would do my bits. Yeah. And it was so funny to see it a couple weeks ago. I would use a brush as like a microphone. So it was like, I was always, in preparation for this. And comedy, I didn't start stand up till I got to Los Angeles. Regrettably, I mean, I try to like no regrets, right? But like, it wasn't until I got to LA that I really was like, if I don't do this now, I'm going to regret it.
Yeah.
You know, and putting all the skills that I had kind of like that were leading me up to this. Like I'm a communications major. I did a lot of reading and writing in college and talking, you know, presenting and, you know, that's always been come naturally to me. And that's what I think has helped me get so far in such a short amount of time. So I'm only been doing it for like 2 years.
Wow.
And I'm addicted. I can't stop. Like it's everything to me. So,
you mentioned while you were in Utah, you had to really kind of watch what you say, because it may trigger somebody else. Mm-hmm. Has that made you a little more mindful of when you're doing bits, words that you know, maybe some comedians say, maybe some don't, or is there just an awareness, whether or not you do it or not? Are you just aware of like, maybe, you know, you may offend somebody?
Ooh, I mean, here's the thing. Comedy is, everyone's going to find something offensive. I mean, you could be the, you know, I say this often, I don't know who invented this quote, but you could be the most beautiful, funniest, smartest, best peach in the room, and there's still going to be someone who's like, fuck peaches. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
So when it comes to like censoring myself, I never want to offend, but at the same time, I feel like I'm doing a disservice because it's like, that's how I feel, you know, like this is my opinion. So it's maybe not necessarily what I feel, but how I communicate that I'm more mindful of. I'm like, how can I say what I want to say without with the least offensive, but like also at the same time, sometimes I'm like, fuck being offensive, you know, it really just depends on like the context of like what it is that I'm talking about. And if I care strongly enough about who I am, who I could possibly be offending. Like I have a joke in my set that, I say I used to be a big tomboy growing up. Now they call it transgender. Mm-hmm. Oh, and that word can be just itself triggering and it gets laughs. Like, and I did have this guy come up to me after a show in Seattle last week. He was gay and he's like, I love your transgender joke. Don't ever stop telling it. But there was a girl behind me who like, when you said it was like, ooh, be careful. But it wasn't like, if you heard the joke, it's not like I'm making fun of transgender people. I'm not saying anything bad. It's just that word could be triggering, you know? So, but that's comedy. Yes. You know, and I fuck censorship. I just think that, you know, just do you, you know?
Oh, I totally agree. And I think, yes. I mean, it's been said.
There's always going to be some soccer mom in the room or some dad, you know, who's mad or whatever, who's going to be offended. But like then that comedy isn't for them, you know, but there's going to be 5 other people in that room who are going to follow you on Instagram after and hopefully show up to your shows. Right. You know? Exactly. So.
No, I think that's absolutely the right attitude to have. And I mean, it's been said on countless programs and everything else, but it's like, I think it could be a hard time to be doing stand up because it's almost like we get off on being offended now.
Well, I mean, yes, you know? we live in you know, we're in this like PC is making a comeback, you know, and comedy, there was that article that came out that it's like, comedy isn't just about being funny anymore. I'm like, no, that's exactly what comedy is about. And that's what it's always been about. And that's what it always should be about. And if it isn't funny, then it's not comedy. Right. So then it's just a TED Talk in your opinion. Right. And there's a place for that. It's called YouTube. And I just, you know, I think that comedy needs to be what it is. It's pure, raw, you know, it just needs to be funny. Yeah. And as long as it's funny, then, you know, what can people really say about it?
Right. So, so how did your family take to you, like letting them know that you're doing stand-up, given the illustrious careers that they all have?
Well, it's funny because I remember one time, like I was saying, I would come down every morning in the kitchen and do my little bits. Mm-hmm. And my mom said, she's like, you should do stand-up. And that never left my mind. I must have been like 13 years old or something. Yeah. But like, you know, when you're 13, the last thing you're thinking of is like your future. I mean, I just wasn't I was never like a career minded kid, you know, cause like I grew up with lawyers and like everyone would be like, do you want to be a lawyer? I'm like, how do I tell them I don't want to do I don't want to do any of that, you know? I think for them, it just made sense.
Yeah.
Like it was like, you are doing comedy. That's exactly what you are doing. And they support it. They've come out and seen me do stand up. And I think for them, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it might be another thing if this came out of left field and, you've been bouncing around different things like, I'm going to try stand up. But yeah, it sounds like it's been pretty ingrained. Everyone's sort of known you've been a performer, most of your life. I mean, I was the same way.
Well, I mean, it was weird because I kind of fell into comedy the backwards route because I have a degree in marketing, communications, social media, whatever.
Yeah.
A master's degree. And I've done I started my own social media business in Florida, and I came out to LA because I wanted to work in entertainment. And I actually took a job working for Levity Entertainment, which is the comedy company. It's the biggest comedy purchaser in the world, but they own all of the improvs across the country. Oh, wow. So before I started getting into stand up, I was doing social media for all of the improvs, and I was doing their email marketing. I was running I was like the operations manager for Jeff Dunham's website. I was helping him with social media. So, my route into comedy was like backward, no one starts at corporate and like works their way down. So but I mean, before I had even taken that job, I had wanted to get into stand up like 4 years before that. So it was like, I think in life, you got to be honest with yourself about what it is that you're doing, because it will find you either way. It's going to catch up to you, and hopefully before it's not too late. Cause there are people who are just, who don't have the luxury necessarily to be honest with what they want to do. And like, I get that it's not realistic, but if you want something bad enough, it's going to come out, like and I think that I just needed to be honest with myself that like, I want to do stand up,
right.
Yeah. So yeah, I was at Levity for about a year in-house, and then I was like doing some freelance for them. And then I ended up taking a job, doing our bartending at the Improv.
Okay.
So
I closer and closer to the stage.
Right. So I was like slowly transitioning out, and then, yeah. Also, when I was at Levity, I was working on my memes account. I started which is basically memes are one-liner jokes. And I was writing jokes for a whole year and I didn't even realize I was doing that and so, yeah, it's weird. It kind of caught up to me.
Right.
As well.
Yeah.
So
we're just circling it.
Right.
And
I was like, the second I was honest with myself, it like everything kind of started coming together more so.
Yeah.
So,
what's the meme page?
So Wolfie Memes is a meme page that I started about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was originally started because I wanted to teach myself Photoshop, because working in marketing, you always have to keep up with the skills, and like, they want you to be a one-man band. And, I just my Photoshop skills were like obsolete, truthfully, even though I like took a class in college, I never like retained any of the information. Yeah. And I also, working in social media and the internet, I'm very up to date on trends, and like memes are just here to stay. This is digital jokes. And, I remember the first time I had seen the Fat Jew, even though he steals from other comedians, just the idea of a page where it's just jokes and pictures and jokes. And I was like, this is the funniest shit I had ever seen. I didn't, so I started this account to teach me Photoshop. So I started Photoshopping like Tommy Chong into space and like writing one-liner captions. And then Tommy Chong started reposting my content. And that's really what like got my account started. And Tommy Chong used to be represented by Levity. It was really weird. Oh yeah. So, but he wasn't like with them at the time or anything.
I think the purge is
it happening? Like, yeah, what's going on outside? Should we wait unless you want the sound, like the rap music sound effects, and like, sometimes I get nervous because I'm like, is it song or people
My
dying
biggest thing
behind
with
me?
alarms is that this happened to me once and it was super embarrassing, but it was the middle of the night and a car alarm kept going off and I was like, what fucking asshole? And it was totally my car.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And somebody
worse.
broke into my car.
Stop.
It's like the car was telling me.
Oh,
and I was
no.
and
You're
the car
just,
was
like,
right
talking
across
shit
the
the
street.
whole time.
Yeah. I was just talking shit. It's like, God, irresponsible jackass.
That's so
Just turn it
funny.
off. Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, so it just like morphed into this whole thing because it combined it combined weed, which at the time there wasn't a lot of like when I started my account, there wasn't a lot of content that I could identify with as a woman who smoked weed. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of like trashy images of, not trashy, but like images of women that like had weed in their butt crack or weed covering their nipples,
Right.
you know? And it's like, I don't identify with this, but I do smoke a lot of weed, you
That's
know?
not how I smoke weed.
Exactly. So, I just was like, okay, I just started Photoshop, or I would like make memes of like the Kardashians and like Rihanna and like, you know, images that like I as a woman would identify with. And I ended up just like tapping into this whole niche market of like female millennials who smoke weed and, you know, like whatever content I'm putting out there. And then I teamed up with my friend. I met my friend Olivia, she was one of the only people in weed in the game that was creating content that like I saw that I could relate to, but like she was like the only one. So I sent her a message. I found her on LinkedIn because my mind was blown when I found out it was a woman behind all of these massive weed accounts. Cause she was like running like 6 or 7 accounts that all pushed out high quality weed content. And it was like, I had never seen anything like it before.
Yeah.
So we met up, we had lunch, and I was like, I think that you and I need to start a weed podcast that's, hosted by women about people we admire in the weed industry, and people that like, support the cause or whatever. And so, because there was also at the time, the only like really big weed podcasts were like Getting Doug with like Doug Benson, who's been around for forever.
Right.
And that was pretty much it.
Right.
And now there's like a weed podcast every corner you turn on the internet.
Yeah.
But so it's been a really crazy journey of getting honest with myself of like, what am I really into? Not being afraid to disappoint the people that care about me, because I was just going to be doing that anyways.
Sure.
And just like kind of combining my passions in a creative way.
Yeah.
And I don't have all the answers. Like I'm not like making the big bucks yet. You know, I'm still looking for more day gigs, constantly the freelancer life or with, the artist life. But it was really when I just like said, fuck everyone else, I'm going to do me, that things started to work out. So
how did you go from thinking and then being told that smoking weed would kill you to now being fully embracing it and loving it and all that?
Well, one, full disclosure, like I said, I took a lot of pharmaceuticals growing up for like anxiety and depression. Cause like my mom, that was her answer of like trying to help me, unbeknownst to my like, well-being, like this may not be the best thing for me. So it wasn't until I got to college that I really started smoking weed. And it was like a guy I was dating. And even then I was still like reluctant because I still thought at the time, I'm like, I'm going to die. I had like tried it like once before I left college. Like I tried to smoke weed out of an apple. I didn't get high and I was like, whatever. So I got to college, started smoking and pretty much like fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And I just like the way that it made me feel and the way that it kind of just took the edge off and enhanced my life. It didn't take away from like whatever I was doing. And then my parents, I think it was like, I just started getting high all the time. Yeah. And I'm not saying like this is like the right way to go about it or whatever, because I was smoking in places that it wasn't legal. So like, who knows what I was really consuming, if it was like the right strain or whatnot. But as time went on, I just like, it became, just a part of like whatever I was doing and the people that I hung around with. And then I went from Vermont to DC. That's when like my heavy usage started. And I didn't stay at American. I was only there for like a year and a half. It turns out being the dumbest person in the room isn't always the best place for that person. I don't know. Like, I feel like now I could go back, but it was just like, I probably like it just wasn't the right place for me.
You just feel like alienated, or
I just felt like everyone else knew what was going on. And I just was like, I don't know what was going on. It had nothing to do with the weed. It was just like, they were at a different academic level than I was, at a different academic pace.
Well, sure. Cause they didn't get to take the same test over and over again until I got it.
Also, maybe they just weren't smoking as much weed. Speaking of pace, but really, I mean, it was just, American's a great school, and you have to be like disciplined academically to like succeed there. And I just like, I never took, academics that seriously. It was, whatever. So I ended up transferring down to Lynn University in Florida, where I was like the smartest person in the room. Whatever. You gotta, get your self-esteem checks where you can, but I still liked Lynn because, the teachers that I had were all retired professionals because they all retired to Florida. Yeah. So my teachers were all people who like worked in the fields they were actually teaching. So it was still a good academic experience for me. Yeah. But I was also smoking a lot of weed in Florida, which at the time was highly illegal. But I did like my senior, or like I don't want to call it a thesis because it wasn't my thesis, but one of my like big writing projects was I took a class on social movements, and I studied NORML. Okay. Which is like the National Organization for like Reformed Marijuana Law. I think that's what it stands for. It's probably not what it stands for, but it's all about fighting for the rights of like the weed laws. And they have one, like basically a chapter in pretty much every place, every state that weed is becoming a thing. And they're like one of the oldest like weed organizations for like advocacy and rights and whatever. Not necessarily rights, maybe like advocacy, but so I had developed this interest, I wasn't just about weed for me. It was like, oh, I see something in this. This is, this is going to be much bigger than just smoking weed. So, and my parents looked at it at the time as me self-medicating. Like they looked at it like, I'm a drug addict basically. So I had to deal with that, and kind of like, it wasn't until I moved out to California and started working with my friend Olivia that I felt like I was kind of living a double life, in a sense of like, I couldn't truly be myself when I would come home. I would do a lot of sneaking around them, even though I think they knew it was kind of like the elephant in the room. Sure. So once weed had become legal here, I called my mom. I was already starting recording my podcast. I started creating weed content, and, for a while on my memes account, I wouldn't show images of myself. I didn't even let people know if I was a guy or a girl, because I wanted people to find me funny independently from what my gender was, because I think some people think women can't be funny. Yeah. And, when I started posting images of myself, I would get messages like, whoa, you're a girl. Like they were surprised that someone could, be creating this content.
Crazy.
So yeah. And then I picked up the phone, called my mom. I was like, hey, this is a field that's important to me. I want to work in this. I want to be a part of it. This is who I am. And yeah. She was like, okay, yeah. And now it's great. My mom, she uses CBD lotion on her feet to fall asleep. Like
there's so many
she
benefits.
Gets it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I don't have to tell you, but
Yeah. So it's funny because I would never think that years ago, like coming from a place where they're like, you're self-medicating with marijuana, to like my mom being like, hey, can you get me some of that cream so I can take it on a flight? Right. Yeah, mom.
Yeah. It's funny. I work for part-time. I'm an assistant for like a older woman in Beverly Hills, and just listening to her on the phone with like, it's just to have gone from when I was in high school and like somebody's sketchy older brother sold us bad weed,
swag,
swag, exactly. To listening to this old woman on like a 1-800 number talking to a pharmaceutical company about wanting brownies or whatever. Yeah. It's just so funny to me.
It's what a time to be alive, world. Right?
Yeah, it's crazy. My last weed related question would just be, what was that first time that you actually did it? Was it equal parts like fear and excitement, or Like, try and take me back to that. Like,
Oh,
you said it was
man,
with your
it
boyfriend at the time, maybe?
Yeah, we would go on these blunt rides because I was living in Vermont at the time, which is like a great place to get high. I mean, you're in nature,
Right.
you know, and it was like intense, but in a good way. Like everything just felt happier. Things were funnier. Food tasted better.
Sure.
Everyday mundane things were hilarious. You know,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It just was an enhancement to my life. So I don't know if I get high like that anymore, or even whatever I was smoking back then. But
Right.
I just remember feeling great. Yeah.
But like, what about right before you took the hit?
I mean, I was scared. I was like, my parents are totally going to find out. I'm going to go to jail. You know, like I'm never going to do anything with my life. I don't know if I had the last thought, but like,
Right.
yeah, I mean, there was I was judging myself, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And then that probably all went away. You're like, oh yeah. Oh, this feels good.
I mean, it really took a while. It did take a while for that. 'Cause like, you know, I'm smoking weed and I'm also, which I know personally makes me feel better. And I feel good. I know how it helps me. But at the same time, I'm hearing, you know, the judgment coming from people that I care about and the concern. So I had to get to a place where which I think moving out here helped come to a place of acceptance that I'm not alone when I say that this is a medicine. This makes me feel good. This helps me. There are benefits to it. So it was like coming here, getting involved in the industry, giving back in the ways that I can give back was the validation that I needed to know that I'm not doing anything wrong.
Right.
So,
yeah. Well, I think you got a lot going on, which is really exciting.
Thank
I
you.
mean, it's got to feel good. It must just be a relief to be doing what you want to be doing. And even on the days where maybe you're not making the money or whatever, it's like, well, I'm not going to have a regret in 20 years that I'm not doing what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. I mean, I can go to bed, you know, and wake up every morning and fully know that like I'm living my life the way I want to live it. Yeah. And, you know, I'm in control of like my future and that feels good. Yeah. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, where can people find you and all the awesome things you're doing?
You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Wolfie Memes. You can also follow me Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Wolfie Comedy for my stand-up, wolfiememes.com for my website, youtube.com/The Bud for weed videos. We're The Bud on iTunes with 2 Ds, The Bud. For podcasts. So, and then I'm at the Laugh Factory October 11th. And yeah, just follow my Instagram for updates on shows and stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah. And for listeners, I'll put the links in the description.
Cool.
And for you watchers, then the links will be in the video. So there you go. Well, you're a goddamn champion for being here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. What time did you get to bed last night? I'm curious.
Man. Honestly, it wasn't that like it was 1 a.m. It wasn't that late. Right. You know, I was up. I was, you know, I made my commitments.
Yeah.
As a stoner, I'm very serious about my commitments. Okay. So.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
Yeah. That was the episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. It was really nice talking with Rachel. She's had quite an interesting go of things, and for someone who's only been doing comedy for a few years, I think she's on a great path, and I'm excited to see where she heads next. She will be performing at the Laugh Factory if you are in Los Angeles on October 11th, so be sure to check that out. If you're not in LA, or you are, you can listen to her Bud podcast with 2 Ds. That's Bud on iTunes or wherever you get podcasts. All of Rachel's social media pages, there are links in the description of this video and audio presentation. You can also follow Wolfie Memes on Instagram and check out some of her really funny memes that she's been making. They are great. That's all I've got for this week. Once again, if you could leave us that 5-star review, that'd be fantastic. And email me if you want to. badtimesgoodstoriespodcast@gmail.com. Until next Wednesday, keep laughing.